What is something that men think turns a woman on, and actually does? When I first got hired, my boss was extremely resistant to hire me. In fact, the only reason why he did was because his boss told him I had too much experience to pass me up. So when I started working for him, I was convinced that he didn't like me. At first, he acted like it too. He wouldn't even make eye contact with me, despite him having long conversations with every single one of his employees. Even at our meetings, he would refuse to even look at me. But eventually, I got sick of it and confronted him. I asked him why he hated me so much and if he wanted me out so bad, fire me. He looked flabbergasted, and all he could say was he didn't hate me and he'd change. I could have sworn he smiled a little. From that day on, he started treating me just like everyone else. He said hi every morning, acknowledged my hard work, and even encouraged me to do more. But he didn't just stop there. He began to leave little notes of encouragement at my desk every morning, something he never did for anyone else. Sometimes, on the notes, he'd ask me to meet him in his office at a certain time for a private meeting. I always convinced I was in big trouble, but he would just use the time to chat with me, despite me being busy. He would do it at least 3 times a week, and it started to evolve from there. He started to ask me to take our lunch break at the same time, and we'd go to a local cafe and just chat. I was scared at first, but out of nowhere I started looking forward to our meetups. One day, I stayed a little longer after work to make sure I could catch up on my work after a meeting, but he told me to go home. When I looked out the window and noticed it was getting dark, he asked me if I walked home. When I told him I did, he immediately told me to get in his car because he was going to be driving me home. The other workers started to catch on to his special treatment, but instead of preaching about creepiness, they would laugh at me and tell me how lucky I was that he even looked in my direction. Everyone was convinced that he felt bad for me and just wanted to take me out so that I'd forget that I looked like a grandma. Before my boss started being nice to me, I was able to avoid comments on my skin by just staying unnoticed. But now that the attention was on me, everyone noticed my uneven skin tone, red spots and wrinkles that rated me a solid 4 out of 10. I thought staying hidden and covering my body with tattoos would be enough, but now they're fading and everyone is noticing me again. But I couldn't resist him, despite my fear that he'd begin to notice my face too. I decided to invite him to a thank you dinner, but I was secretly using this as a way to say goodbye. However, he beat me to it with a little note on my desk asking me to be dressed up fancy at 7 p.m. I said yes and he picked me up and took me to a fancy restaurant. That time I really wanted to make an effort to get to know him, so I asked about his interests. His face immediately lit up as he talked about his 9.6 near mint grade comics. He even gave me anime fun facts like, did you know that Attack on Titan ends on chapter 139, because the number 140 represents freedom, which Eren never got. I never would have suspected my boss was a huge nerd. After dinner, we went for a walk, and as I was rambling, I noticed him staring at me. I felt self-conscious and asked him to stop, but he said I was beautiful and he was falling for me. I thought he was joking, but he insisted he meant it. I started crying, overwhelmed by his words, and he asked what was wrong. I confessed my insecurities and how I'd never felt confident because of how people treated me for my looks. To my surprise, he hugged me and said he loved every part of me, even the things I saw as flaws, but he understood why I couldn't see it that way because of my past experiences. He held me as I cried and then drove me home when I was calmer. I dreaded going to work after that, expecting things to be awkward, but he talked to me like usual. 2 weeks later, he called me into his office with a gift bag. He wanted me to like myself and gave me a See Clearly sunscreen set with a facial sunscreen with kynotin in it that he said would even out my skin tone, clear my red spots, and smooth my wrinkles, so I'd look my age. It also included one with OrganoShield technology that would keep my tattoos from fading. I was skeptical, but I promised to use it since he was so excited. The next day, I admitted I forgot to use it because it wasn't part of my routine. He said he figured that would happen, so he bought his own See Clearly set and kept it in his office in case I forgot again. Then he asked if he could put the sunscreens on me himself. I was shocked but said yes. He got close and gently rubbed the sunscreen on my cheek, his fingertips soft against my skin. He then applied the OrganoShield to my tattoos, holding my hand and running his thumb over mine. It felt incredibly intimate, like he wanted an excuse to touch me. When he was done, he said he couldn't wait for me to like myself, and my heart swelled. He backed away, seemingly shy, and said he'd remind me daily to use the set. The next day, I got a text from him, reminding me to use the See Clearly sunscreens to protect my skin from UV damage because he didn't want me to live with damaged skin. His nerdy enthusiasm about sunscreens actually motivated me to use it regularly. I hadn't noticed when my boss applied the sunscreens, because I was too focused on his touch, but they blended into my skin without leaving a white cast and felt lightweight. The next day, I got another message from him saying that I shouldn't forget to put the sunscreens on because the sun could give me skin cancer and I could die. And he said the world wouldn't revolve the same if it didn't have me in it. Everything he did made my heart race and made me feel lucky to be alive. I found myself looking forward to his messages, no matter how nerdy or sweet. Even when he joked, "Don't forget the kynotin sunscreen because wrinkles come with aging, not that you're old or anything," I was just happy he was helping me be consistent with the See Clearly sunscreen. After 3 weeks, my skin tone started to look more even. My foundation blended better than ever. Instead of looking like I mixed 3 different shades together, my red spots were disappearing, and it actually looked like I had a natural blush. Even my tattoos were becoming vibrant again, and the line work looked clearer. At work, people began complimenting me and my tattoos, and I finally understood what it was like to have people go out of their way to talk to you. It felt like they were finally seeing what my boss had seen in me from the start. I went to his office, excitedly telling him about everyone's compliments. He smiled warmly and asked if I thought I was pretty. For the first time, I confidently said I was starting to feel pretty. He asked why I said starting to, and I admitted my wrinkles still made me insecure. He asked if I was using the Kynoton sunscreen like he told me to, and even though I said yes many times, he didn't believe me. He then said maybe I could rub it on you from now on. From then on, my boss would apply the Kynoton sunscreen, caressing my face, leaning in close, and tucking my hair behind my ears. If I didn't know better, I'd say I looked more beautiful from his perspective, just like peak finger. After 3 months of using the Kynoton sunscreen, my wrinkles finally faded, and I looked my age. My face looked flawless as my insecurities disappeared. I felt confident and walked everywhere like I actually got play. I didn't care who stared because that's all they'll ever be, watchers. And with my tattoos looking freshly inked after using the See Clearly sunscreens, I had my comfort blanket if I ever needed it. Now that I was no longer weighed down by insecurities, I finally sucked it up and confessed to my boss. I told him I could never repay him for everything he did and how he helped me see I was worth loving. I said I wanted to be with him, to listen to his anime fun facts and call him Spider-Man as much as he'd want me to. When I told him I wanted to be with him, he kissed me, and I was finally his Mary Jane Watson.